I'd also say, like, in this situation in a vacuum, Caleb was right. All right, welcome in. It is the Breer Report for May the 16th. We are halfway through the month of May now. It is the dog days of the NFL offseason. OTAs starting soon. Mini camps after that. You got your draft classes in. The rookies are now working with the veterans. So things will ramp up here over the next couple of weeks, but we still do have some news to get to. And our first topic for this week stems from a story that was on ESPN.com on Thursday. It's actually an excerpt from a book by a buddy of mine, Seth Wickersham. He does a great job with these things called American Kings. It's on the quarterback position and its place in American culture. It should be a fantastic read. Again, he does a great job with all of these things. And in the excerpt that was released on ESPN.com, there was a story of Caleb Williams basically saying that he didn't want to play in Chicago, or his dad getting word to the Bears that he didn't want to play in Chicago ahead of the 2024 draft. It was also in there that Caleb potentially was looking at the idea of playing in Minnesota. Now, over time, and this is something that I was reporting on at the time too, Caleb Williams and his camp did investigate the idea of trying to pick their spot. And really, after going through it, what they realized was it probably wasn't feasible. And I don't think Caleb wanted to be the bad guy. I think that was a big piece of this was you're starting your NFL career. I'm not sure that he wanted to be the guy who forced himself away from one of the NFL's flagship franchises. So it never came to pass. But I do think there are a couple of things to pay attention to here. First, it's the Caleb Williams Chicago situation in a vacuum. And I think if you look at some of the reasoning that Caleb Williams had for shying away from playing for Chicago, some of them have come to fruition. And, I've always felt this way, and I feel this way now the same way I felt this way 10 years ago, that too often we do not take enough into account the situation that a quarterback is going to and the role that it plays and whether or not he makes it. Too often we look at it and a quarterback's either a success story or a bust. The reality is, I think more often than not, you can tie whether or not a talented young quarterback drafted high in the first round makes it to where he is going. I think it's very, very, very rare that a quarterback at 22, 23, 24 years old is good enough to overcome bad circumstances. The one example that I can think of is what Andrew Luck went through in Indianapolis at the beginning, and that he was able to make the playoffs in 3 straight years and progress another round further in the playoffs each year, wild card round, then divisional round, then AFC championship round, while the regime there was to some degree crumbling, while he was dealing with some moving parts on the coaching staff. And so that's the one example. But other than that, I mean, look, like maybe Patrick Mahomes would have made it anyway, but he goes to Andy Reid. He's playing in an offense that's already got 2 established tackles in Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. He's throwing to Tyreek Hill. Josh Allen goes to a Buffalo team that made the playoffs the year before. Lamar Jackson goes to a team in Baltimore that was excellent. I mean, maybe you could say a little bit of this applies with Joe Burrow. But even with him, he had T. Higgins, and he walked into a situation where he had an offensive head coach in 2020, and he got Jamar Chase in year 2. So, I think more often than not, we can tie quarterbacks to their circumstances. So if you want to reverse engineer that, if you're a quarterback and athletes are more empowered now, athletes are being paid in college, it would make sense that at some point somebody would say, I want to be in position to go into a great situation, so I'll have a better shot at getting a second contract, which is what all these guys are looking at, which the quarterback position could be $50 or $60 million per year. So I think we're going to see more of this, not less of it going forward, with athletes being empowered the way that they are. I'd also say, like, in this situation in a vacuum, Caleb was right. Caleb was going to a place where the coach was on his last legs, and Matt Eberflus wound up getting fired in November of last year. And I think really, if you look at this situation for what it was at the time, any of us in November, December, January of 2023 and 2024 could have said that Matt Eberflus was going to need to win big in that next year to do it, to survive. And he was bringing in a new offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron, and that was a concern. And Shane Waldron was fired in midseason too. So a lot of the things that Caleb Williams went through in Chicago, was stuff that he was concerned about before he even got there. So, um, now, Caleb Williams is going to have Ben Johnson. The situation around him has gotten markedly better with the offensive line being reworked with Jonah Jackson and Joe Tooney and Drew Dahlman coming in. They're adding Colson Loveland to the offense. And again, like having the offensive minded head coach should help too. So from a big picture perspective, I do think we're going to see more of this, not less of it, from athletes coming into the NFL over the next 10 to 20 years as athletes start to think with more of a business mindset. We saw how Marvin Harrison had handled his pre-draft process last year. I think this is along those same lines. And from a smaller picture standpoint, I do think for Caleb Williams in Chicago now, he's probably in a situation that maybe he would have looked on more favorably ahead of the 2024 draft if that situation had been in place back then. All right, our second topic for today is going to be the rules proposals that'll be on the table in Minnesota next week. And the one that's gotten the most attention over the last 48 hours or so is the proposal to allow NFL players to play in the 2028 Olympic Games in the flag football competition. Now, why does the league want this? It does seem, at least on the surface, like you would think no team would want their players going a month before the season or a month before training camp starts and running around in a situation where there's injury risk, where there could be a physical toll playing takes on their bodies. You just wouldn't want them doing that from a team perspective. This isn't about the individual teams. This is about the league as a whole. And I think this goes back to it goes back really to two topics of growth for the league. One is the growth among women, and that the female fan base, that's something they've been working on for a long time. The reality is that for the most part, women don't play tackle football, and you get a different level of engagement from people who have played the game at some point in their life, whether it was as an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a teenager, a college kid. You get a different level of engagement from somebody who's played a sport than you do from somebody who hasn't. There's just a difference there. And so this is about getting more people playing the game. And if you can get more women involved in the game by introducing flag and trying to make flag a varsity sport, then that's something, a varsity sport in American high schools, then that's something that I think the NFL would really want to push. And so pushing flag and putting flag on a bigger stage and amplifying flag by putting NFL players in those flag competitions is to the benefit of that. Then there's the international part of this. And I think this is the big box thing that we're talking about with the NFL's initiative here. Football is not an easy game to export. Basketball is easy to export. Soccer is easy to export. You can take soccer and basketball anywhere you want in the world. In basketball, all you got to do is lay down some blacktop, put a couple hoops up, and give kids a bag of balls, and they're good to go. Soccer, even easier. Find a patch of grass, put a couple goals down, give them a bag of balls, they're good to go. These games are easy to export. And it's one of the reasons why you see, obviously soccer has been global for a long, long time, but even in basketball, you see how the game has been globalized and how overseas we have so many teams that are competitive with the United States now in hoops, where it never was that way before. And you see in the NBA, great players like Nikola Jokic that are playing at an MVP level that have come from overseas that are a product of the game being globalized. And that's led to global popularity, which means more money for the league. Football, you need a ton of players to play. It takes 22 players to play. You need equipment. Insurance costs are high because of the physical nature of the game. And I sort of think the best way to really give you guys the idea of what this is and what this looks like is comparing it to ice hockey. Ice hockey in Canada is a farm boys game. That's the heart of hockey, is the blue collar Canadian, right? In the United States, because it's not fully incorporated into every area, it's really become a prep school sport in a lot of ways. It's really become a high-end club sport in a lot of ways. It's not a blue-collar sport anymore in the U.S. And most of it is because of the expense of the sport and because it's not baked into the culture in America the way it is in Canada. You don't have rinks everywhere, equipment. They don't just hand that out to kids. It's sort of become more of a high-end sport. Football is the opposite. So football here in the United States is largely a blue collar sport. Football in Canada is a prep school sport. It's a white collar sport. Why? Same thing, because it takes a lot of infrastructure to have the game. And if you're not fully invested as a country in it, then it's going to sort of have a niche feel to it. And it's going to be something that only certain people can afford. By sending flag overseas and by doing things to push flag domestically and make it more popular domestically and make it more visible globally, you try to get more kids to play in Europe. You try to get more kids to play in Africa. You try to get more kids to play in Asia. And the idea is that that can raise awareness to football globally. So that's the whole idea. That's why they're trying to push it. Again, like I don't know that flag football is ever going to be popular as a spectator sport. I don't know how much of a dent like having it in the Olympic Games is going to make. It's not like I sit and watch 3-on-3 basketball, which I think is sort of like the analogy here. I don't watch 3-on-3 basketball in the Olympics. I will watch the actual Olympic basketball. But we'll see what happens. I would think that gets pushed through next week. A couple other things we're going to be voting on next week as well. A proposal made by the Packers on the tush push, and that being banned. I have seen the language. The language is unchanged from March, which is interesting. I thought they might change that some. It is unchanged from March. And then another voting matter for the owners in Minneapolis next week is the proposal from Detroit to change the seating for the playoffs. Now, some people think this is about fair play, what happened with Minnesota and Detroit next year. That's not really what it is. What this is, I think, for most teams is trying to make more games relevant week 17 and 18. And by changing the seating process, giving more teams more to play for at the end of the season, they think they're going to have a better product at the end of the year. Finally, our third topic, and this is the never-ending topic for this spring, hopefully not spring and summer, Aaron Rodgers and where things are at right now. We are now past the schedule release. They didn't do anything crazy with the Steelers schedule, so maybe that gives Aaron Rodgers a little bit more of a green light to go. I still think that we all should have respect for his personal situation and everything that he's gone through from a personal standpoint. I do think that is real, and it's something that I think the Steelers have given him some space to deal with. So I made this point a few different places this week. I'll make this point here. I think part of the reason the Steelers wait to get him under contract, part of the reason he waits to sign a contract is because he knows that if he had signed first week of April and then they say, okay, deal done, I'm a Steeler, but I've got some personal things I'm going to deal with. So for the next couple of months, I'm going to be in and out, or I'm not going to be around a whole lot. That wouldn't do much to quell the storylines. So when the Steelers report for their offseason program, where's Aaron? Where's Aaron? Where's Aaron? When the Steelers report for OTAs, where's Aaron? Where's Aaron? Where's Aaron? When the Steelers report for minicamp, where's Aaron? Where's Aaron? Where's Aaron? He's not under contract now, so they're not really having to deal with that, at least not the level they would be dealing with it if they were. So I still think the likelihood is that he winds up a Steeler. The risk in not getting him under contract, of course, is that something materially changes. He maybe decides to retire. There's an injury somewhere else that opens up an opportunity for him, and now you've got competition for his services. But I think the main thing is trying to respect his personal space, and that's where they are. I still, again, think he winds up being a Steeler. Appreciate all you guys coming out. We will have a couple more Breer reports coming for you next week. I'm sure there will be plenty to talk about coming out of the league meeting. Our first Breer report will likely come from Minneapolis, maybe on Tuesday there. Always appreciate you guys coming out. As always, you can get me your feedback at Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert_Breer on Instagram, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook. Appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend.